What is up, guys? And welcome, firstly, to everyone who is joining the Self Limiting Beliefs Masterclass. This is the very first live edition of the Mental Wealth Investor Club podcast and membership community. And this will be the very first kind of masterclass, as I said, and it's all based around self limiting beliefs. And I'm super pumped to be recording this one because it's a conversation that I've been having not only with myself, but also with my private one-on-one mentor clients lately. And it's an extremely powerful topic that I think absolutely everybody who tunes into this session itself would be able to take some benefit away from and improve in many aspects of their life, but particularly probably the one, or maybe there's a few areas of your life that are currently holding you back. And a lot of the time it's subconsciously. So we often, I think it's fair to say that absolutely everybody has some form of goals or visions that they are working to in some way or another. And we often wonder why we fall short, or what's holding us back, or, we feel like we're doing all of the right things, but we just can't seem to take that next step. And that can be very, very, very frustrating and also demoralizing. And it leads to a lot of, lack of motivation. It leads to fear of failure. It leads to a lot of conditioning, which is often the case in terms of how we even come to self-limiting beliefs in the first place. Now, these can come about from experiences that we have as an adult. They can come about particularly experiences we have as a child as well. And I think it's also important to mention that, look, I'm not sitting here saying that I'm some qualified psychologist that can understand, everything about you and your psych side and all the experiences that you've had and you know, undoing all the negative conditioning or the conditioning that you've had as a child or anything like that. All I'm saying is that through learning more and more through my own self-improvement journey and, learning bits and pieces through personal development and doing the work on myself as well, there's been a lot of areas in my life where I have managed to firstly identify a self-limiting belief, because that can be quite difficult as well, because a lot of the time, and 99% of the time, they are subconscious. So they're things that we don't even put any thought to, and they're beliefs that typically will determine the direction that we go in basically everything in our whole entire life. So if you think about a belief that you've got at the moment, and often we don't question our beliefs because we think they're legit. That's why we believe them, right? So if we're not questioning our beliefs on a regular basis, then you have to be able to understand that if the way that we're operating is based off a set of beliefs and they are not aligned with what we want to be doing, or they're maybe incorrect, or they're maybe not in our best interest, then you can see very easily how that can lead to fucking disaster pretty much. But not only just disaster, but it can also lead to a lot of blocks and resistance in many areas of our life, whether it's relationships, financially, with our career, health and fitness goals that we're setting for ourselves as well, which is obviously a big area that I've worked a lot on, not only with myself, but a lot with clients and, face-to-face and online clients as well. So firstly, I think it's very important that we should be always kind of questioning our beliefs and looking at the way that we are operating on a daily basis in absolutely every area of our life. As I said, whether it's work, whether it's with our money, whether it's with our friendships, relationships, communication, all of these, the way that we operate is typically based off some form of conditioning in our brain that we don't put any thought to. Okay, so I'm sure you guys that are watching or listening at the moment can think of plenty of times where you have acted in a way or behaved in a way without even really thinking about it. And then later on, you've gone to yourself, why the fuck did I do that? Or why do I always react that way or respond that way? And the word react is actually a really good place to start, because one of the fastest ways to identify a self-limiting belief is to see what we react to, where there's resistance or where there's resentment. Okay, so taking a step back, I think it's also important to actually explain what a self-limiting belief is. And as I've said, they're typically subconscious thought processes, subconscious conditioning that we have experienced, that we have kind of adopted through experiences in our own life, or whether it's, the way that we were brought up, an environment that we've surrounded ourselves in. And this leads to decision-making, behaviors, reactions that we pretty much aren't in any control of, because it's subconscious, right? It's like when we breathe or when we blink. We don't even think about this type of shit. It's automatic. And a lot of the time, these self-limiting beliefs are things that we're not even picking up on or acknowledging at the time. But when we are able to identify them, it starts to make a lot of sense as to why things may not be working out for you in your life, or maybe why you are always finding yourself with some form of resistance or block, or you're always finding yourself in the very same position or similar conditions and similar results and environments and circumstances over and over again. Often when we identify what these limiting beliefs are, it starts to make a lot of fucking sense. So firstly, as I said, when we start to identify these limiting beliefs, that's the very first step. And that is a huge step in itself as well, because if we're not conscious of these things, we're not conscious of these reactions, behaviors, resentments, then some people can go through their whole entire life without making any change to that or without recognizing any of this. And that's when you often see people fall into the victim mentality, right? So when you see people start to just think that, this is just how my life is, or, because I grew up this way, this is how my life has to be, or, I'm just unlucky, or everything happens to me instead of for me, and all this type of shit. And we see it over and over again. I'm sure every single person that's watching or listening is guilty of, acting in that way some way or another at some point in time. I think that's pretty safe to say. But when we identify these limiting beliefs, and I'm going to give you guys a few examples too, because that'll start to make a lot more sense to you, and it'll give you some clarity and maybe even help you on your journey in terms of identifying these limiting beliefs for you as well. And what I would absolutely love for everyone to do that is watching or listening to this right now, whether it's live or in the replay in the Mental Wealth Investor Club, or wherever you are listening or watching this at the moment, I would love for you to grab out a pen and paper, and you don't have to do this the first time, you hear this. Maybe you come back and listen or watch the replay over and over again and let this sink in and start to put some thought to it when you feel like you're ready for it. But grab out a pen and paper, whether I've got my journal here. This is something that I use every single day. So this is what I'm using every single day to write my gratitude, my high priority tasks for the day. And this is where I do kind of my own self, the deep work on myself. But I want you to grab out pen and paper. And as we go through these steps, and as I go through, firstly, how to identify your limiting beliefs, then figuring out the underlying reason for it, and then figuring out the action, and then looking for evidence as well, the actions, and looking for evidence as well as to one, either how it's not true, or two, how you can break through that. This can be an absolute game changer for you. This one masterclass, and it could completely change everything for you. And, after having certain conversations with private one-on-one mentor clients, it has been. And, when you're there face to face, or whether it's via Zoom, wherever it may be, you can see the change in someone, or you can see the light bulb kind of go off when they realize that, fuck, this could be actually it for me. And this all starts to make a lot of sense once they start to identify these things, right? So I would highly recommend doing the work. It's not going to be comfortable, and there may be some certain realities that you just don't want to face. But if you're genuinely serious about kind of moving forward and moving past these limiting beliefs, which is essential and it's necessary for you to continue to move forward and get past these blocks and resistance, you have to do the work. And it's definitely not going to happen straight away. It's not like just a simple task that you're going to do and, fucking voila, it's done. It won't be like that, but it'll take time, and it'll be the best decision you've ever made. So firstly, identifying what your limiting beliefs are, right? So this is where you might want to hit pause and take some time to actually have a think to yourself, like, what areas of my life at the moment am I really struggling with? Like, when do I find myself in the same circumstance over and over again? What do I have resentment towards? What do I have resistance towards? Is it relationships? I always find myself in a relationship with someone very similar. Is it, I really struggle to open up or get vulnerable around people. And that's the reason why I'm struggling with relationships. Is it money? Is it you always feel like you're kind of blocked or capped at how much money you can actually make? Every time you get money, you end up spending it or losing it or mismanaging it. Is it with your fitness? Do you stay on track with your fitness goals for a short period of time, but you always fall off the wagon. You find yourself starting again every fucking Monday, or, every couple of weeks or months, you're starting a new plan again. Is it, it could be absolutely anything. Is it, constantly getting into arguments with friends and constantly feeling like drama just follows you around and you're always in this victim mentality? These are some very, very simple examples. And, I want to kind of use a couple of examples in some detail as we go through these steps to help you actually understand as to how you can start to put this into action, and that'll start to make a lot of sense for you, right? So I want to use what's a good example? Limiting belief. Let's use one. We'll use a very simple one, right? Of money. So if I take someone who growing up, they were surrounded by people, maybe it was their parents, maybe it was their friends, maybe it was just the town they lived in. Growing up their whole life, they've always been told that, they need to be extra cautious with money. You hear the terms like money doesn't grow on trees. You need to pick one thing or the other. We can't afford that, all this type of stuff. And that's very common for a lot of people. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't happen, because it's very, very, very common. But when you go to the absolute extreme of being in an environment where there just never is enough money, right? You find yourself now, maybe once you've grown up or once you're an adult or whatever, and you find yourself always in a position where you just feel like you're never making enough money. You never have much money saved up in your bank account. When, you look at other people around you, they start doing well, but you feel like you're always capped, or you're never really seeing much growth in that department. The limiting belief can often be in, we have this subconscious thing in our own head where all the decisions we're making, all the thoughts we're having are based around the fact that we cannot make enough money, because we just think it's not possible, because we've never been exposed to it. You've never been open to the idea of the fact that there is another way. You've never been open to the fact of that, yes, I could potentially make a fuckload of money, or that there's more than enough abundance of money out there for me to start to earn and make. And once I have it, it doesn't mean that as soon as it comes in, it has to go, or it doesn't mean that at the end of each month, what's the saying? There's always too much month left at the end of the money. Something like that. I'm shit at sayings, but this is a limiting belief, and this is something that you can break through. And until you start to identify what your actual limiting belief is, right? So if you see someone that is super wealthy and you automatically think that they're an asshole, or you automatically think they must be a drug dealer, or that they're doing dirty business, or whatever it may be, it's typically because that's what you've always been told. If you've always grown up without much money, and the only people you've ever seen with money, you automatically make these assumptions that just can't happen for me, or the job that I'm in doesn't allow me to get to this position, or this is just not my life, or genetically, or the way things are, the where I live, blah blah blah, that I can't do this. But that is only a belief that you're telling yourself. But every time you have money, or you go to make money, or you go to spend it, you always got this limiting belief in your head that is telling yourself the same fucking story over and over again. So it is impossible for you to break through that if you are constantly under that same conditioning over and over and over again, right? I want to use another example here as well, because I don't want it to be purely based around money. I want this for people to be able to understand this in a different way. This is, a lot of these examples are either stuff that I've spoken about with clients one-on-one, or things that I've kind of seen online, the ways that I've been able to learn and understand self-limiting beliefs as well. But let's use another one. So someone who constantly has trouble committing in a relationship, right? So they just tend to have new partners all the time, or anytime they get close to someone, they push them away. Or they just feel like they're not able to connect properly, or their partner ends up getting frustrated because they're not present, or that they're not fully committing, and the relationship always breaks down. And this may be the same thing with friends as well. It could be the same thing with jobs, with your boss, but in some form of a relationship, there always tends to be a breakdown. And it's often a commitment issue. So you're struggling to stay committed. You're struggling to open up to the other person. Again, this doesn't have to be a loving relationship. It could be friendships, all this type of stuff. And this tends to happen over and over again. It becomes a pattern, and you can never figure out exactly why. All right. So if you've got a partner, you think they're fucking amazing, super attractive, super nice, get along really well, but for some reason, after a short period of time, it just always breaks down. And in your mind, you're always telling yourself, look, it's the other person's fault. Maybe I'm just not, maybe I'm not good enough. It wasn't the right timing, or they just don't like me, or whatever the fuck it is. There's always some excuse. because that's what we tend to do. We tend to come up with these deflections as to why these things are happening, but it's always just this conditioning that we've got in our head. It's never the actual reason why. Okay. And on this, the best way that you can identify these, as I've said, there'll be some that stick out to you straight away. There's certain things you avoid. There's certain things that you have a lot of fear around, or you find resistance to. There's certain things that you react to, a lot, right? So I want to go back to this relationship one, but a quick example would be for someone who is in business and they're wanting to grow their audience through social media. Every time they see a certain person online or a certain group of people online posting certain pieces of content, let's use TikTok, for example. I had with TikTok, this is actually a good example. So when TikTok started, I would see all these TikToks and be like, fuck that. Like, it just doesn't suit my content. These videos are very bizarre. Like, that's not me. I can't believe this person's posting this shit. It kind of frustrated me, and I would actually avoid TikTok completely. And whenever I would see someone's videos doing well, I would always think to myself, well, this is just not my style of content. Their content suits is better. Their audience is different to mine, or they got lucky, and just make up all these fucking excuses. But my limiting belief was the fact that I genuinely thought that I couldn't create content on TikTok that was going to resonate with the audience. Or it wasn't, as I said before, I felt like that the way that I give out value through content, through longer form stuff like podcasting, through online coaching, through doing different pieces of content around training, I just didn't think that would work. So even though I knew I'd been listening to guys like Gary Vee and whatnot talk about this, I knew that in order for me to grow my audience on there and to also stay super relevant and to not lose touch or fall behind with social media, I needed to start posting content on there. But there was a massive resistance to it because in the back of my mind, I was worried about not being good at it. Right. And that's going to move us into step number 2 is identifying and understanding what the underlying cause or the root cause of your self-limiting belief is. Okay. So for the TikTok thing, it was literally me having this fear, not even a fear, but almost like a worry of having to start from scratch. All right. So I had zero audience on there. On Instagram, I've got a decent audience. On the podcast, I've got a great audience. As a personal trainer and online coach, I have a great audience, email list, all that stuff. So my limiting belief and telling myself all these reasons why I shouldn't or couldn't or I don't need to post on TikTok came down to the fact that I was worried about, 1, making a fool of myself, 2, judgment because I didn't have a following, 3, not getting much engagement on there, which is fucking ridiculous because I don't give a shit about that anyway, even on Instagram and stuff. I really don't care. So I don't know why I was feeling this way, but this was it, right? So that was my actual underlying reason as to why I would give myself all these excuses as to why I'm not posting on there. And I found resistance to posting on that social media platform, which is ridiculous. Step 3, which we'll talk about soon, I've moved on to that now. I post regular content on there and the audience is starting to grow. Not that that matters too much, but I kind of broke through that because I looked for evidence, which I'll talk about soon. But I'm going a bit everywhere here with this, so just bear with me. But now, with the relationship one again, because I think that's probably the easiest one to understand, and for you guys to wrap your head around it, even if this has nothing to do with you in terms of relationships, you'll be able to see what I'm trying to talk about. So that step 1 is identifying what that limiting belief is. Okay, so the limiting belief, because of all this relationship stuff, is that you are for this person in particular, maybe the reason that the relationships don't work out, whether it be a loving partner, boss, friend, fucking whatever, the limiting belief is that you don't want to commit, or you don't want to be fully present or vulnerable, or you don't want to show all of yourself or get too excited because you are worried about that person either leaving you. If it's a relationship, it might be you're worried about them cheating on you. But you're worried about losing something that you genuinely enjoy or love. And that is your limiting belief. And that is why you don't commit properly. Okay. This is just one example. But having that in the back of your mind without even subconsciously in the back of your mind, you being worried about someone leaving or thinking you're not good enough or cheating on you or leaving you, or maybe not liking you or things not working out and you having to go through the pain of losing someone, is the reason why the relationship never works, because it comes down to you, not them. Because you may find someone who's perfect for you, but if you're constantly just thinking to yourself, well, this is not going to work, so I'm not going to overcommit, or I'm going to, not write back to their messages as often, or, I'm just going to go out and waste my time instead of spending time with them, or I'm not good at communicating with them, or whenever they try and hang out, I'm just super standoffish and not present. And that leads to the breakdown. And the reason for it is because you are worried about, it's a commitment issue. So that is step 2. Okay, so that is starting to understand the underlying reason for the self-limiting belief. Okay, so step 1, identifying the limiting belief, and that is the fact that relationships don't work for you. Step 2 is figuring out the underlying reason, and that is identifying. Sorry, step 1 is identifying what it is, and that is the fact that relationships don't work because you are fearful of someone leaving you. Step 2 is figuring out the underlying reason why. So with the TikTok version, for me, the reason why, as I just said, was the fact that I was worried about starting from scratch. I was worried about not being successful on the platform. I was worried about not being able to produce good content on there because it was also new and I didn't know how to do it in a way that was going to be effective. From this relationship example, the underlying reason for that may be because when you were a kid, your parents split up and your dad left or your mum left, or someone close to you may have passed away. Or when you were really young, you're in a relationship and your partner broke up with you and you really love them, or they cheated on you, or, you had a group of friends and they just ditched you and ended up bullying you or something like that. But you've had some point in time at a younger age, or it doesn't have to be younger. It could have been when you're an adult or not too long ago. But you've had a certain period in your life where you have lost someone, and then you have felt like after that, for some unknown reason, because it caused so much emotional trauma or whatever it may be, you now have this subconscious conditioning in your head to think that that is how the world works and that's how it's always going to be for you. So all your behaviors from then on in are subconscious reactions to that. And that is why you are struggling so much with staying committed in a relationship or having a relationship for a long period of time, is because in the back of your mind, you're always worried about it not working, or you losing someone, or someone, you not being good enough for someone. So to avoid going through that pain all over again, you are very standoffish and distant, and you don't commit, and that's why it never works, right? So that's step number 2. So number 1 is identifying what the limiting belief is. Number 2 is figuring out the underlying reason why, the root cause for it. Now, number 3, this is where all the good shit happens, and this is where you need to get creative and start to figure this out. And, in the Mental Wealth Investor Club, I'm going to go over some strategies, how to work through this and give some more examples. And with my private one-on-one clients, that's what we've been doing, and it's awesome to see, and it is a completely liberating feeling, and it does require you to get quite vulnerable. And I had an episode on that inside the community very recently around vulnerability and the power of it. But step 3 is now looking for evidence as to, 1, why that is not true, why your limiting belief is not true, or 2, evidence as to how someone else in the same position has been able to prove to you as to why that is not true. Okay. Or how they've been able to break through it. So let's say the relationship one again. If I can keep going back to this, I'm not giving out relationship advice, trust me. But evidence as to how that's not true, right? So you're a kid, or when you're younger or whatever, you now believe, or whatever, as I said before, that someone is going to leave you, or they're going to cheat on you, or if your parents split up and one of them left, you think that it was because of you, and that they don't like, it was your fault, or they don't love you, or whatever it may be. But that is most likely 99.9% of the time not the case. And if it's someone's cheating on you or whatever, like, it's definitely, most of the time, it's something to do with the other person. All right. So you need to figure out why that is not true, and how to start changing that belief. So you look at other examples of it. So let's say someone else, when they were younger, their parents split up, or their partner left them or cheated on them, or what's another example? They lost someone, or someone kind of let them down. And then later in life, they've now found a partner, or they've found a best friend, or they've found a boss that they've got a good relationship with. that it has worked out exceptionally well. They've eventually got married, they've had kids, they've been together for 20 years, whatever it may be, and they're in the exact same position as you at some point. So you're looking for evidence as to how your limiting belief is not true. And then we look to put the actionable steps in place to start to work through it. Okay, so another example would be the financial one. So if you always believe that you're never going to make enough money, or that, you'll always be poor, or you'll always be just making enough money, look for examples for someone who has been in a very similar position to you, or someone who has been in a much worse position than you at some point in their life, and how they are now successful and how they have done it. And it doesn't mean you need to do the same thing in terms of getting successful, but it's very, very obvious and tangible proof to you that someone in the same or worse position than you has been able to break through this limiting belief and give you evidence to show you that is not true. And that means that you can do it as well, because this is just evidence for you to understand that the only thing that is holding you back is the thoughts in your own head, because whatever you tell yourself over and over again will be a reality. So if you're telling yourself negative shit or giving yourself excuses and reasons over and over and over again, then that is going to be a reality. But if you do the opposite and you switch it to positives and you tell yourself that you can achieve the things you want to do, or that, if you find a partner and they're attracted to you and you're attracted to them and it will work out, or that if you are very good at something or you're passionate about something, that there is there's multiple ways that you can monetize that and start to earn a lot of money and use the money properly, and create a healthy relationship with money and start to get a better mental conditioning around what money is, and, have good energy match with money, then you can start to make a fuckload. You can have a lot of it. You can make more of it. You can help more people with it. You start to look for all the evidence there. So with the TikTok one, like I said, I started to look at other people that put out similar content to me, and just realized that it was just a bullshit excuse for myself. And I started to implement ways that I can start to put more content out there. I just put myself out there, got vulnerable, and started taking those steps. And you start to work through it. And now it's not a limiting belief. So some are going to be much harder than others. And like I said, it's not going to happen overnight. But the first step of identifying it, and even when you're starting to work through it, the biggest first step that you can make is starting to just pick up on these behaviors or habits or ways of thinking at the actual time that it's happening, and identifying it, even if you're not able to control it completely yet, or you're not able to change the way of thinking just yet. If you can start to pick up on it at the time, then over time you'll get better at managing it and making the right choices with it, or putting the actionable steps in place to work through that limiting belief, and continue looking for evidence. So you need to start filling your mind with positive thoughts, with thoughts that are aligned with where you want to go, not where you are right now, regardless of how far away that seems. You need to visualize that over and over again. You need to step away from any negative self-talk. You need to step away from any of the bullshit stories you're telling yourself over and over again, because if you keep telling them to yourself, you will genuinely continue to believe it and nothing will change. Okay, so as a saying that I'm sure you've all heard, but I think it is a very good one, is that whether or not you believe you can or believe you can't, either way, you are correct. So you stop putting this limit on yourself, because like I said right at the very start of this, the only reason you are bogged down or feeling resistance, or the only reason that you are limited, is because of yourself and your own thoughts and your own actions and the stories you're telling yourself, whether it be consciously or subconsciously. Okay, so if you could start to make these changes, I guarantee that you'll see a significant change in your life for the positive, for the better. And you'll start to realize that there's many of these limiting beliefs you can work through. And that once that resistance drops, once the awareness is there that, you can create your own story, you can write your own story, you'll be amazed at how much abundance there is and how much better your life can be. So I hope you've enjoyed this, taken some value, excuse me, taken some value from it. If you have, I would love to hear some feedback from you. I appreciate everybody who is tuned in, whether you're watching it or listening to it at the moment. Amazing. As I said, send through any feedback, any more questions you've got. Sorry, just need a drink of water here. But I'm very interested to hear how much of a positive impact this has on everybody who watches or listens to this, because it is an absolute game changer. And unfortunately, for a lot of people out there, they are being held back by this. And 99% of the time, they have no idea. So you guys are in the absolute elite group of mental wealth investors. And I'm absolutely pumped for you. And I'm looking forward to seeing the results from this, and obviously sharing more and more of this. So thank you so much. I appreciate you joining. Again, just remember that you've invested in yourself, and that's the best investment that you can ever make. And I'm very happy for you, and wish you all the best. So thank you so much.